They are deeply, deliberately trying to embed themselves into Afghanistan. For all you know, just like the last time around, you may have lakhs and thousands of Pakistanis moving into Afghanistan to take control, and they may this time around never come back, because right now Afghanistan is looking much better than Pakistan itself. But this is what we've been able to access, courtesy our investigations editor Manoj Gupta, as to why there is a big fight and feud within the Taliban ranks itself, especially because of the growing influence of the Haqqanis and those backed by the Pakistan ISI. Let's try and understand what the inputs are. First up, Pakistan is pushing Interior Minister Sirajuddin Haqqani to censure the Taliban government. That's what is happening. 64 retired ISI officials are in the Taliban government ministries and also in the presidential palace, and they are the ones who are trying to call the shots and trying to dictate the function of every ministry. Top Taliban leadership has been given Pakistan IDs. Pak envoy Mansoor Ali Khan is issuing orders to Taliban officials. They are coming there, learning, taking instructions from him. These are pictures that we've accessed. Speaking against Pakistan is liable to cause arrest or termination. There are those who have just vanished, their posts taken away, and they're gone. This is also happening. Haqqaniya Madarsa and other bodies are working under the ISI to take over the government. And most importantly and finally, Pakistan training military officials in Panjshir. That is what is happening. Let's try and give you more information as this Taliban versus Taliban rift is exploding. And here's what is happening. The rift between the Interior Minister and the Haqqani, Sirajuddin Haqqani, and the Taliban leadership is also very, very evident. There is also a deepening resentment which is happening within over Pak interference. There are many who are the Kandahar group, which is very, very upset with the growing influence of the Pakistanis and also the Haqqanis. Also, Pakistan is pushing the Haqqanis to censure the Taliban government very, very strongly. If we move on, and there you go, censuring the Taliban government. And then further to, the ISI is actually forcing Haqqani to send armored vehicles to Pakistan. We've got visuals and we'll put those visuals out. You saw it. And those armored vehicles were going all the way from Afghanistan into Pakistan. Haqqani and affiliated leaders are visiting Pakistan regularly, and Taliban leaders backing Haqqani, they actually are reporting to the Pakistan government. So this is what is creating a Taliban versus Taliban situation, and things are looking very, very ominous. But more importantly, just like they did in the 90s, the Pakistanis are trying to deeply embed themselves in Afghanistan and to try and control all the affairs, not only funnel in arms, ammunition, but more importantly, drugs. They want to control that trade there too. Let's go across to our guest, Mohammad Ashraf Haidari, Ambassador of Afghanistan to Sri Lanka, is with us. Dr. Tara Karta, former Director, National Security Council Secretariat, with us, and Kamar Chima, strategic and political analyst, joining us. The Pak-Taliban takeover is the hashtag. Who about it? Tweet about it. Let me go across to Mr. Ashraf Haidari first up. Ambassador Haidari, a lot of what we have said, this is information that we have gleaned. Our investigations editor getting us these details. How much of it do you agree with?
Well, I mean, I haven't really looked into the details, but what is important to always remember that the Taliban is a project of Pakistan, historically looking at when the Taliban were created back in '94, and since, of course, nurtured and developed, with one exception when 9/11 happened and they were toppled, but they were quickly reconstituted, of course, divided between Quetta Shura and Mir Shah Shura and the Haqqani network, but Pakistan has played an instrumental role in creating them, sustaining them, and of course deploying them to capture Afghanistan as an act of outright aggression, violating the United Nations Charter, Chapter 7. So these divisions are inevitable within the Taliban, especially when it comes to those that are quite subservient to the ISI, as you pointed out, versus those who over time, see the situation for themselves. They listen to the people of Afghanistan, women of Afghanistan, and the international community, and as well as major stakeholders, including those within the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and delegations from China, India, Central Asia, Russia, and others that have met with them. The demand is that they need to change, that they need to, form inclusive and broad-based government that is acceptable to all Afghans, and those are the ones who, over time, have developed an independent view as something that Pakistan wouldn't like to accept, as they try to maintain total control and to even remote control as much as possible, and as well as placing advisors, as well as also sending paramilitary forces who fought alongside the Taliban to capture various parts of Afghanistan until Medal.
But Ambassador Haidari, who's controlling their foreign policy? The last time around the Taliban takeover had happened, I remember more than 7 lakh Pakistanis had embedded themselves in Afghanistan across all departments, and they all fled the moment the Taliban was pushed out, and the forces, democratic forces, pro-democracy forces, took control again. Is there a similar situation happening, or is it far more sinister than last time?
Well, all you need to do is simply go on the Twitter account of the Pakistani ambassador to Kabul and see, as you pointed out, his meetings, as his residence, where he invites or gets members of the interim cabinet of the Taliban to go over and see him and get instructions from him. So it's very clear, not only inside Afghanistan, especially in Kabul, the Pakistani embassy is quite active in managing and speaking for the Taliban, but also externally. That's why the foreign minister of Pakistan, Qureshi, has been quite busy from day one, from the last weeks that led up to the collapse and until now, which right now they're holding this extraordinary meeting of the OIC on Afghanistan, trying to push their agenda when it comes to the recognition and as well as milking OIC countries for resources which could then benefit the Taliban and achieving their goals in Afghanistan.
True. Ambassador Haidari, please stay with us. I'm just going across to Dr. Tara Karta. Dr. Tara Karta, we have to consider this very, very carefully, because on the one hand, we had the Taliban spokesperson, Suhail Shaheen, urging India to reopen its embassy and resume flights, international flights. On the other hand, we are saying that they are nothing but puppets in the hands of the Pakistani establishment.
I think, Anand, we don't have a choice. I mean, okay, we have a choice, but I would still say that it's worthwhile to keep some kind of contact on the ground despite all, because as your report shows so clearly, there is a lot of infighting. There are people who don't want the Pakistanis, who would like an alternative, not just in India, but perhaps even other countries who would genuinely want to help the Afghan people. So in that sense, I think it's worth keeping some feet on the ground, to get people. But we are not saying there are problems. Part of it, which is obviously beholden to Pakistan, whether they like it or not, we don't know the extent to which these people are being forced to do. As your report so nicely, very, very well puts the whole thing in a nice picture, that there is an element of, not an element, I should say, very strong, there's a stronghold. It's a Pakistani stronghold. So they've got this whole place tied up, and they are issuing orders. Sooner or later, sure, but it's going to get worse. What I was really wondering is that, you just had the former head of Pakistan's Federal Board of Revenue who said that Pakistan is bankrupt.
Yes.
And this bankrupt country is now trying to run Afghanistan. Okay, and they're running two countries at once, so to speak. And they have no money to give to Afghanistan at all, considering that I think about 75% of Kabul's revenues came from foreign aid. Is Pakistan able to do that? It cannot. But clearly, so that raises two questions. One is whether someone else is funding them, or like you also put it, whether the narcotics is coming in, because as you know, my suspicion is the narcotics, the extent of narcotics has gone up by at least 37%. This is a UN report. 37%. It's never been this high since 1994, except once in 2014. So then the curious part of this is that this huge rise in narcotics is at a time when the actual price of raw opium, of dry poppy, is very, very low.
Yes.
So it's not remunerative in a normal manner. It's not remunerative as a business. But clearly there is something else going on here.
No, they're making heroin. They're making heroin in these opium fields. And that's what's happening. And then they're trying to cart the heroin across, and Pakistan wants to control this. So, Kamar Chima, अपने देश में कुछ है नहीं करने के लिए, so you're sending people across to run affairs in Afghanistan. That is understood that you're wanting to help the people of Afghanistan. That may be your counter. But why are you carting their armored trucks?
Well, I think what is the proposition here? The proposition here is that just today Pakistan is hosting the OIC Foreign Ministers Summit so that we can bring lives of the Afghan people, we can make the lives of Afghan people better. I think we are not here, nobody could ever rule Afghanistan. However, and with such a kind of a bad economy we are having at the moment, how come we can run Afghanistan with our finance and resources? That is why we are asking, we have millions of people who can come in Pakistan. We have hosted refugees already. So whatever we are thinking and doing and acting for Afghanistan, that is to save Pakistan. So because there are more than around 300,000 people have already come in Pakistan, this is what Pakistan's information minister has said. So we want to stop anything bad to happen, and obviously we will be worse hit by that refugee crisis. We have been hosting the refugees before. So we are asking India, we allowed India to send whatever things they want to send so that the Afghans can get whatever. So, but looking only that it is ISI, Pakistan's deep state is working, we are trying to control Afghanistan. What is left in Afghanistan to control? That is a loose state run by the mullahs.
No, the entire opium fields, sir. The entire opium fields that have gone up from about 160,000 hectares to 224,000 hectares, a 37% jump up. So you are using the drugs to fund yourself. It's the heroin very clearly, and you're cutting away all the armored trucks and the ammunition which the US left behind. Close to $85 billion worth of arms ammunition. Clearly you are taking away. So what you said is very correct. You are using Afghanistan to save Pakistan.
Listen. The United Nations Office for the Drug Control has continuously been saying that the heroin or this poppy cultivation will increase. And who was using the heroin when the NATO and the ISAF forces were in Afghanistan? Pakistan was not there, for instance. Just go back 6 months ago, 3 months ago.
So you are using it now because आपके पास पैसा नहीं है. You are bankrupt, so you need the drug money to fund all your nefarious activities.
Controlling. The NDS and the raw network was controlling that.
Is it, sir? It is all very convenient to say the carting of the heroin. You are using India as a market, but you are funding yourself. Your economy currently, your establishment currently is functioning purely on drug money, and these drugs are coming in from Afghanistan. So that is one aspect. My point is, what is it that you want to achieve this time around? I know that close to nearly more than the numbers are anywhere between 1 lakh to 7 lakh the last time around the Taliban takeover had happened. How many people are planning to go? They all came back to Pakistan when the regime change happened. This time around it looks like Pakistanis are deliberately going to migrate to Afghanistan because the situation, however bad in Afghanistan, seems better than in Pakistan.
Well, okay, then if you are accepting that the situation in Afghanistan is better than Pakistan, then let the people move. Then
no, why should they move? That is not your country. That is not your country to live off, live in, or even control. That nation belongs to the Afghans. What are Pakistanis and people with Pakistani IDs and Pakistani origins doing in Afghanistan? That's a straightforward question.
Send them to Afghanistan if situation is
No, you are the ones who are sending it. It is your DG ISI who landed up there. It is terrorists that you have harbored who are now currently sitting as interior ministers in Afghanistan. They are all Pakistanis. They are not Afghan. They are Pakistani. Sirajuddin Afghani is a Pakistani. He is not Afghan. He is not Afghan. What are Pakistanis doing in Afghanistan is a straightforward question. I have Ambassador Haidari, who's an Afghan, who's himself turning around and saying what are Pakistanis doing in my country.
Poor in India. They are poor in India. They may be poorer than Afghanistan. So send them in Afghanistan for new opportunities. I think you are missing this opportunity by keeping those poor who are in the Modi regime here. 800 million people.
I'll tell you what, when you have no answer, then you come to these shallow, inane arguments which anyway don't make sense. That's what happens every time you are cornered. You try to sound intellectual and then you immediately move and shift to inane. And that's exactly that's what happened this time around to Mr. Cheema. But Ambassador Haidari, what are Pakistanis doing in Afghanistan? Is that not something that the Afghan people should immediately turn around and reject? Why is this growing Pakistani influence being tolerated? Ambassador Haidari.
Bashing against Muslim countries like Pakistan, Afghanistan.
Sir, I'll tell you what, you as a Muslim nation have gone ahead and run roughshod over another Muslim nation. You don't need to explain anything to anybody else. What you have done to the Afghan people itself is a travesty. Being an Islamic country, you have not even bothered about the welfare of the Afghan people who are also Muslims. Fellow Muslims have been tortured by Muslims here. And then, thereafter that, within those who are all Muslims, you are further picking out, singling out Shia. You are picking out all those are non-Sunni, non-Deobandi, and you are targeting all of them. That is also what you are playing the level of sectarianism. So don't give all these excuses and these inane arguments. Sir, pause. There is only a certain level of your ability to sound inane and be inane and present an inane rationale that even the viewer here in India can tolerate. Let me go to Ambassador Haidari, please. Ambassador Haidari, why is this Pakistan influence not being rejected outright? Why is it being tolerated?
Well, the people of Afghanistan completely reject. That's why we have protests and demonstrations on the streets of Kabul and across Afghanistan every day. The reason why it's not covered regionally and globally is simply because our freest media in the region has been completely blocked out. And to the extent that Pakistanis are present in Afghanistan are trying to manage this catastrophe, this widening humanitarian crisis which they have created, that they are now unable to manage simply because they've pushed the people of Afghanistan to the brink as we speak. Over 22 million Afghans are in acute need of humanitarian assistance that's not reaching them. And among them, almost 4 million children are suffering from malnutrition. Remember that Pakistan created the Taliban to destroy, kill, maim Afghans for the past 20 years. These people are medieval, barbarian, absolutely not educated on anything, let alone Islam. They have no idea about Islam, what Islam stands for in terms of tolerance, coexistence, and of course the very progressive nature of Islam, on which the Holy Quran is very clear. So this is an entity created for strategic purposes, and they're trying to use it as much as they can, but unfortunately they are fast failing as the resistance against it across Afghanistan is growing. We see, increased pockets of resistance north of Kabul. We see on the streets of Kabul, and as well as especially women. That's more than half of our population that come out and speak against the Taliban every day. So it's just a matter of time before this group will lose it, and as well as their state sponsor.
True, and this time around it should be the women of Afghanistan who should lead this rebellion. Somewhere one gets the sense that unless the women speak out and the women reject it outright, democracy in the true sense, without any puppet, any outside influence, is not going to come back, and there is not going to be peace that would happen in Afghanistan. A land of bounty, a land of very hard-working people, but somewhere reduced to being redundant across and always put in a perennial state of strife. There are also nations who believe that getting into Afghanistan to help the Afghan people would also mean a story of attrition for them, because they've seen the US bleed, they've seen Russia bleed, and now China and Pakistan are also bleeding. But somewhere the solution has to come from within the Afghan people. That's where seems to be the answer. Ambassador Haidari, Kamar Chima and Dr. Tara Karta, thank you very, very much. With that, we call it a wrap on this edition of The Right Stand. Short break and brass tacks follows.